It was a cold, rainy night in Seattle. The streets were slick with water, and the sound of rain hitting the pavement filled the air. Emily Carter, a 28-year-old nurse at Seattle General Hospital, trudged home after a grueling shift. Her dark hair stuck to her face, drenched from the storm, but she barely noticed. She pulled her thin jacket closer, her mind elsewhere. Life had been hard on her. Her mother had died years ago from a relentless illness, leaving a hole she couldn't mend. Then her ex-boyfriend walked out, breaking what trust she had left. Now she lived for her patients, giving everything to save others because she couldn't save the ones who mattered most. As she crossed a quiet street, a sudden screech tore through the rain. She froze, her heart jumping. Headlights flared in the darkness, followed by a sickening crunch. A car had veered off the road, slamming into a lamppost just yards away. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood, and the driver's side door hung open, swaying in the wind. Emily's training kicked in. She ran toward the wreck, her sneakers splashing through puddles, until she reached the driver. A man slumped against the steering wheel, his head tilted at an odd angle. Blood streaked his forehead, and his breathing came in shallow gasps. Emily dropped to her knees beside the open door, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. She leaned in, assessing him. His chest rose unevenly, and a faint wheeze escaped his lips. She grabbed his shirt, a soaked white button-up, and tore it open with a sharp tug, the fabric ripping under her fingers. His chest was bruised, ribs likely cracked from the impact. She pressed her palm against his sternum, feeling for movement, then checked his pulse at his neck. It was weak, but there. Rain poured over them, soaking her further, but she didn't care. She shrugged off her jacket, pressing it against his chest to stabilize him, tying the sleeves around his back to hold it tight. "Hold on," she said, her voice firm but soft. "Don't die. I can't lose anyone else tonight." She fumbled for her phone, her fingers slippery with water and blood, and dialed 911 on 11. "There's been an accident off Pine Street," she said, her words quick. "Male driver, unconscious, possible chest trauma. Send an ambulance now." The man's head lolled, his eyes fluttering open for a moment. They met hers, brown and dazed, a spark of life fighting through the haze. His lips parted, a whisper slipping out. "Thank you, Angel." Then his eyes shut, his body going slack. Emily's breath hitched. She pressed harder on the jacket, urging him to stay alive. "Come on," she muttered, her voice shaking. "Help's coming. Stay with me." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights flashed as an ambulance rounded the corner, skidding to a stop. Paramedics rushed out, pulling Emily aside as they took over. She stumbled back, rain streaming down her face, watching as they checked his vitals and lifted him onto a stretcher. "He's got a pulse," one shouted, securing an oxygen mask over his face. Another loaded him into the ambulance, the doors slamming shut. Emily stood there, breathless, as the vehicle sped off, disappearing into the wet night. She didn't know his name, didn't know if he'd make it. All she knew was she'd given him a chance. Her hands trembled, stained with his blood, the rain diluting it into faint streaks. She turned away, walking home in a fog. His words lingered in her head. "Thank you, Angel." It was barely audible, lost in the storm, but it clung to her. She didn't feel like an angel. She felt drained, fractured, like someone who kept pushing forward even when it hurt. At her small apartment, she shed her wet clothes and collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know why this stranger mattered so much. Maybe it was because saving him felt like reclaiming something she'd lost when her mother faded away. Across town, the man lay in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines. His name was James Sullivan, a 32-year-old CEO of Sullivan Tech, a company known for its bold innovations. He didn't know it yet, but the woman who'd knelt by his wrecked car had just altered his path. Drifting between sleep and pain, her face haunted him, those worried eyes cutting through the rain. He didn't know who she was or where she'd gone, but one thought stuck. He had to find her. Morning came, rain still tapping against Emily's window. She dragged herself up, her body sore from the night before. She pulled on fresh scrubs and headed back to the hospital, ready for another shift. She tried to shove the stranger from her mind, telling herself he was just another case, another life she'd brushed against. But something nagged at her, a feeling she couldn't shake. Their story didn't feel finished. At the same time, James woke in a stark hospital room. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, tracing lines across his bruised face. His ribs ached, every breath a reminder of the crash, but he was alive. He shifted, seeing his assistant Sarah by his bedside, her laptop open. "You're up," she said, her voice thick with relief. "We thought we'd lost you." James rubbed his forehead, his throat dry. "What happened?" Sarah explained. He'd been driving late, swerved to avoid something in the road, and hit a pole. A woman had found him, kept him stable. "She called it in," Sarah said. "Without her, you'd be gone." James sat up, grimacing. "Who was she?" Sarah shook her head. "No idea. She left before anyone got her name." He closed his eyes, picturing her face, those eyes filled with urgency and care. "Find her," he said, his voice firm despite the pain. "I need to thank her." Sarah nodded, her fingers already moving across the keyboard. James sank back, his mind churning. He didn't know why she mattered so much, why her voice echoed in his skull. "Thank you, Angel." He'd said it half-conscious, but it fit. Whoever she was, she'd pulled him back from the edge. He wasn't letting her slip away. Emily moved through her shift at Seattle General like a shadow. She checked vitals, changed bandages, offered quiet reassurances, but her thoughts kept drifting to the crash, to the man she'd dragged from the wreckage. She wondered if he'd survived, if he'd remember her hands on his chest. Probably not, she told herself. People forgot the ones who saved them, lost in their own survival. As she finished her rounds, a coworker handed her a note. "Someone dropped this off," they said. Emily unfolded it, her pulse quickening. The message was short. "Thank you for saving me. Meet me at the Pinnacle, 6 p.m. tonight." A white rose was tucked inside, its petals damp against her fingers. She stared at it, a mix of confusion and curiosity stirring. Who was he, and why did he want her there? Emily stood in her cramped apartment, staring at the note in her hand. The white rose rested on her kitchen counter, its faint scent mixing with the stale air. The words looped in her mind. "Thank you for saving me. Meet me at the Pinnacle, 6 p.m. tonight." She glanced at the clock. It was already 5 p.m. She didn't know who he was or why he'd tracked her down, but something about the note tugged at her. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the rose. She hadn't been think like this before, not with such intent. At the hospital, gratitude came in fleeting smiles or quiet nods, never invitations to fancy restaurants. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. The Pinnacle was upscale, the kind of place she'd never step foot in on her nurse's salary. Her wardrobe reflected her simple life, scrubs, jeans, a few faded sweaters. She settled on a plain black dress, the only thing she owned that might pass as decent. It was old, a relic from a date years ago with her ex, but it would do. She slipped it on, brushed her hair, and grabbed her coat. As she locked the door, doubt crept in. What if this was a mistake? What if he wasn't the man from the alley? But her feet kept moving, carrying her to the bus stop. Across town, James sat in his hospital room, adjusting the cufflinks on a crisp suit Sarah had brought him. His side ached, but he'd insisted on leaving for this meeting. Sarah hovered nearby, her brow furrowed. "You sure you're up for this?" she asked, closing her laptop. James nodded, his jaw tight. "I owe her. She didn't just save my life, she gave me a reason to think about it." Sarah raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. She'd already tracked Emily down through hospital records, a perk of being assistant to a CEO with connections. "Her name's Emily Carter," Sarah said. "Nurse at Seattle General, no family listed, keeps to herself." James listened, filing away the details. Emily. It suited her, soft but strong, like the hands that had pressed life back into him. At 5:45, Emily stepped off the bus, the neon glow of the Pinnacle looming ahead. It was a sleek tower of glass and steel, perched on a hill overlooking the city. She smoothed her dress, feeling out of place among the valet drivers and well-dressed patrons streaming inside. The hostess greeted her with a polite smile. "Reservation?" Emily hesitated. "I'm meeting someone. He left me a note." She showed the paper, and the hostess nodded. "Mr. Sullivan's waiting. Follow me." Sullivan? The name didn't ring a bell, but Emily followed, her pulse quickening. The hostess led her to a private table by a floor-to-ceiling window. The city sparkled below, rain-streaked and alive. A man stood as she approached, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair neatly combed. He wore a tailored suit, but the faint shadow of a bruise marked his jaw. Emily froze. It was him, the man from the alley, cleaned up and standing like he owned the room. Which, she realized, he might. "You're her," he said, his voice low and warm. "The one who saved me." Emily nodded, unsure what to say. "I'm glad you're okay. I didn't expect this." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please sit. I'm James Sullivan." She sat, folding her hands in her lap. James settled back into his seat, studying her. Up close he was striking, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held a quiet intensity, but she didn't linger on that. She was here for answers, not flattery. "Why am I here?" she asked, her tone direct. James took a breath, leaning forward. "First, thank you. I'd be dead if you hadn't found me. The doctors said another minute and I wouldn't have made it." Emily shifted, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's my job. Anyone would have done it." He shook his head. "No, not anyone. You." She waited, sensing there was more. James clasped his hands on the table, his gaze steady. "I run Sullivan Tech. It's a company my father built, but my mother shaped its heart. She was a philanthropist, spent her life helping people who couldn't help themselves. Before she died, she left me a wish." He paused, his voice softening. "She wanted me to marry a good woman before I turned 33. Someone kind. Someone who'd carry on her dream. If I don't, the charity fund she left me, millions of dollars, dissolves. Her dream dies with it." Emily frowned, piecing it together. "When's your birthday?" she asked. 3 months from now," he said. "And last night you proved you're the kind of woman she meant." Her stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" James met her eyes, unflinching. "I'm asking you to marry me. Not for real, just for show. 3 months. That's all I need. Pretend to be my wife. Help me secure the fund, and I'll give you something in return. Name it." Emily stared at him, her mind racing. This was insane. She didn't even know him, and now he wanted her to play house? "You're serious?" she said, half a question. He nodded. "Dead serious." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Why me? You don't know anything about me." James smiled faintly, the first crack in his polished exterior. "I know you knelt in the rain to save a stranger. I know you didn't ask for anything after. My mother believed kindness like that is rare. So do I." Emily looked away, out at the city lights. She didn't feel rare. She felt tired, stretched thin by years of giving without getting back. But his words stirred something, a flicker of purpose she hadn't felt since losing her mum. "What's the fund for?" she asked, testing him. "A free hospital," he said. "She started it before she got sick. No one should die because they can't pay, that was her rule. I want to finish it." Emily's chest tightened. Her mother had died in a crowded ward, waiting for care that never came. She'd dreamed of opening a clinic ever since, a place where no one would be turned away. James didn't know that, but his offer hit closer than he realized. She studied him, searching for a catch. "What's in it for me?" she asked. He didn't blink. "Tell me what you want, money, a job, anything." She thought for a moment, then spoke. "A clinic, my own place, free for anyone who needs it. If I do this, you make that happen." James didn't hesitate. "Done. I'll fund it, every cent. You'll have it by the time we're through." Emily bit her lip, weighing her options. It was crazy, reckless even, but the clinic, her mother's dream, it was worth the risk. Okay, she said finally, her voice steady. I'll do it. 3 months, that's it. But this is a deal, nothing more. Don't expect me to fall for you. James nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes. Fair enough, it's a deal. He extended his hand across the table. Emily took it, her grip firm despite the unease in her gut. His hand was warm, steady, and for a second she wondered what she'd just agreed to. As they shook, a waiter approached with menus, breaking the tension. James ordered wine, and Emily stuck to water, keeping her head clear. They ate in near silence, the weight of their agreement settling between them. She watched him across the table, this man she'd pulled from death's edge, now asking her to step into his world. He was polished, confident, but there was a shadow in his eyes, a loneliness she recognized. She pushed it aside. This wasn't about him, it was about the clinic, about keeping her mother's memory alive. When dinner ended, James stood, offering to drive her home. She declined, preferring the bus. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. We'll start making this real. She nodded, slipping the rose into her pocket as she left. On the ride home, she stared out the window, rain streaking the glass. She'd saved him once, and now she was saving something else, something bigger. But as she clutched the note in her hand, a small voice whispered, "What if this saved her too?" The next morning, Emily packed a small suitcase and stood outside her apartment, waiting. A sleek black car pulled up and James stepped out, dressed in a gray suit that made him look every bit the CEO. He took her bag without a word, placing it in the trunk. "Ready?" he asked, his tone calm but expectant. Emily nodded, though her stomach churned. She wasn't just leaving her home for 3 months, she was stepping into a life she didn't belong in. "Let's get this over with," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. James drove in silence, the hum of the engine filling the space between them. His mansion sat on a hill overlooking Seattle, all glass and stone, surrounded by manicured lawns. Emily stared as they pulled into the driveway. "This is where you live?" she asked, unable to hide her awe. James shrugged. "It's just a house." But it wasn't just a house to her, it was a fortress, a world apart from her cramped apartment with its leaky faucet and peeling paint. He led her inside, past a grand staircase and into a living room with a view of the city skyline. "Your room's upstairs," he said. "Second door on the right. Make yourself at home." Emily settled in, unpacking her few belongings into a guest room bigger than her entire apartment. The bed was soft, the walls lined with books she'd never have time to read. She sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at her hands. This was temporary, she reminded herself. 3 months for the clinic? That's all it was. Downstairs, James met with Sarah, going over schedules. "First event's tomorrow," Sarah said. "Charity gala. You'll introduce Emily as your fiancé." James nodded, glancing up the stairs. "She'll handle it," he said, though he wasn't entirely sure. The next evening, Emily stood in front of a mirror, tugging at the emerald green dress James had sent up. It fit perfectly, hugging her frame in a way that felt foreign. She wasn't used to this, to silk and heels and hairpins holding her curls in place. James knocked on her door, stepping in when she mumbled a reply. He stopped, his breath catching for a moment. "You look good," he said, simple and honest. Emily smoothed the fabric, avoiding his gaze. "It's not me, but it'll do." He handed her a small velvet box. One more thing. Inside was a silver ring, a single diamond glinting in the light. "For the act," he said. She slipped it on, the weight unfamiliar on her finger. The gala was a blur of chandeliers and clinking glasses. James kept her close, his hand resting lightly on her back as they mingled. "This is Emily Carter," he told a group of donors, his voice smooth. "My fiancée. She's the reason I'm here tonight." Eyes turned to her, curious and appraising. Emily forced a smile, nodding as people congratulated them. "How'd you meet?" a woman asked, her tone dripping. James glanced at Emily, letting her take it. "In the rain," she said, keeping it vague. "He needed help, and I was there." It was the truth, or close enough. Later, they stepped onto a balcony for air. The city glowed below, rain tapping the railing. James leaned against it, loosening his tie. You did well, he said. Emily shrugged. I don't like lying. He looked at her, his expression softening. Neither do I, but it's for something bigger. She nodded, staring out at the lights. Tell me about her, she said suddenly. Your mom? James hesitated, then spoke. She was tough. Grew up poor, fought for everything. When she married my dad, she made him promise to give back. The hospital was her dream. No one should die waiting, she'd say. Emily listened, her chest tightening. My mom died waiting, she said, her voice quiet. Crowded ward, no beds. I wanted to be a nurse to fix that, but it's never enough. James turned to her, his eyes searching hers. It will be. That clinic, it's yours. I'll make sure of it. For the first time, she saw past the CEO to the man carrying a promise. They stood there, the rain a soft curtain around them, until Sarah called them back inside. Days turned into weeks. They fell into a rhythm, playing their parts. James took her to the hospital site, a half-built structure on the edge of town. He walked her through it, pointing out where the ER would be, the pediatric wing. Mom wanted this for people like her, he said, kicking a pebble across the dirt. People who had nothing. Emily ran her hand along a concrete beam, picturing her clinic. Mine's smaller, she said, but it'll matter. He smiled, faint but real. It already does. One afternoon, he drove her to a storage unit. Inside was a box of his mother's things, dusty and untouched. He pulled out a silver necklace with hope engraved on a pendant. She wore this every day, he said, handing it to Emily. It's yours now. She held it, the metal cool against her skin. Why me? She asked. Because you're her kind of person, he said simply. She slipped it on, the word resting against her collarbone. It felt like a bridge, connecting her to a woman she'd never met. Nights were quieter. They ate dinner together, talking about the hospital, their mothers, the lives they'd lived. One evening, rain pounded the windows, and Emily found James in the study, hunched over blueprints. You're still up, she said, setting a mug of tea beside him. He rubbed his eyes. Can't sleep, too much to do. She sat across from him, sipping her own tea. You don't have to do it alone, she said. He looked at her, something shifting in his gaze. I'm starting to see that. The next night, rain fell harder. Emily sat in her room, staring at the necklace in her hand. She missed her mom, the ache sharper than usual. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. She didn't hear James knock, didn't see him until he was beside her. Hey, he said softly, sitting on the bed. What's wrong? She wiped her face, embarrassed. Just thinking about her, my mom. He didn't say anything, just pulled her into a hug. His arms were steady, warm, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. You're not alone anymore, he said, echoing her thoughts. She stayed there, letting the rain drown out her sobs. Weeks later, they met the lawyer overseeing the fund, a stern man named Mr. Grayson. He eyed Emily, skeptical. You're the fiancé? He asked. She nodded, holding up the ring. 3 months? Isn't much time, he said. Prove it's real. James squeezed her hand under the table, a silent promise. They left the meeting, tension easing as they stepped outside. He's tough, Emily said. James laughed, a rare sound. He's nothing compared to you. But trouble brewed. Mark, Emily's ex and Sullivan Tech's CFO, cornered her at a charity event. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes dark with resentment. You're with him now? He spat, his voice low. James Sullivan? After what he did to me? Emily frowned. What are you talking about? Mark smirked, leaning close. He's using you. Always has a plan, that one. Watch yourself. She stepped back, unease settling in her gut. Mark had broken her heart once. Left her when she needed him most. Why was he here, stirring doubt? That night she sat with James on the mansion's patio, rain pattering above them. Mark said something, she admitted. That you're using me. James tensed, his jaw tightening. He's bitter. I fired him years ago for skimming funds. He's got no proof. She searched his face, wanting to believe him. This is still just a deal, right? She asked. He held her gaze too long for comfort. "It's whatever you want it to be," he said. She looked away, her heart thudding. The lie was blurring, and she wasn't sure where the act ended anymore. They kept going, visiting the hospital site again. James handed her a hard hat, grinning. "Future Dr. Carter," he teased. She laughed, the sound surprising her. "Just Nurse Carter," she said. "That's enough." He watched her, his smile fading into something softer. "It's more than enough." The rain slowed, and for a moment it was just them, standing in the dirt, dreaming of something bigger. But Mark's words lingered, a shadow she couldn't shake. The days ticked down to James's 33rd birthday, now just 1 week away. The hospital project was nearly finished, its white walls rising against the Seattle skyline. Emily walked the halls with James, her sneakers scuffing the fresh concrete. She could see it now, patients filing in, kids laughing in the pediatric wing. No one turned away. It was her mother's dream, her dream, and James had made it real. She glanced at him as he spoke with a contractor, his voice steady, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. He caught her eye and smiled, a quiet thing that warmed her more than it should. The line between fake and real was fading, and she wasn't sure how to stop it. Back at the mansion, they sat in the living room, papers spread across the coffee table. James flipped through blueprints, marking changes, while Emily reviewed donor lists for the hospital's opening. Rain tapped the windows, a familiar sound that tethered them. "1 week left," she said, breaking the silence. "Then what?" James set his pen down, leaning back. "We finish the act, secure the fund, open the hospital. You get your clinic." She nodded, but her chest tightened. "And us?" The question slipped out, unguarded. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "That's up to you," he said. She didn't answer, turning back to the papers, her fingers tracing the necklace at her throat. The next day, trouble struck. Emily arrived home from a shift at Seattle General, her scrubs wrinkled from a long night. A manila envelope sat on the kitchen counter, her name scrawled across it. She frowned, tearing it open. Inside were documents, grainy photos, a typed letter. Her hands shook as she read. "James Sullivan plans to sell the charity fund after securing it. He's been lying to you. Check the dates." The photos showed James meeting a suited man, papers exchanged, timestamps from last week. Her stomach dropped. She flipped through bank statements, forged emails, all pointing to one thing. James was playing her, just like Mark had warned. She sank onto a stool, the necklace heavy against her skin. Hope, what a joke. She'd let herself believe in him, in this, and now it was crumbling. The front door opened and James walked in, loosening his tie. "Hey," he said, stopping when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" She held up the envelope, her voice cold. "Explain this." He took it, scanning the contents, his brow furrowing. "This isn't real," he said, tossing it on the counter. "Someone's setting me up." She stood, anger flaring. "Mark said you'd do this, use me, then toss me aside. I should have listened." James stepped closer, his eyes sharp. "Mark? He gave you this?" She nodded, her fists clenched. "He warned me weeks ago. I didn't want to believe him, but this proves it." James ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "He's lying, Emily. I fired him years ago for stealing. He's got a grudge." She laughed, bitter and hollow. "And I'm supposed to trust you? After this?" She pointed at the papers. "You promised me a clinic, a hospital, all of it. Was that a lie too?" He stopped, facing her. "No, that's real. Every cent I've put into this. It's for her, for you." She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "I was right from the start. This was a mistake." She grabbed her coat, the ring glinting on her finger. "I'm done." James reached for her arm, his voice low. "Don't go, let me fix this." She pulled away, storming out into the rain. "Fix it yourself," she called back, the door slamming behind her. The city blurred as she walked, rain soaking her through. She didn't care. She'd been a fool, letting him in, letting herself feel. The necklace bounced against her chest, a cruel reminder of her trust. James stood in the empty kitchen, the forged documents scattered on the floor. He grabbed his phone, dialing Sarah. "Mark's behind this," he said when she answered. "Find out what he's doing, now." Sarah's voice crackled through. "I'll dig, but James, you need to tell her the truth." He hung up, staring out the window. Rain streaked the glass, mirroring the chaos in his head. He'd meant every word to Emily, every promise. This wasn't just about his mother anymore. It was about her, about them. He couldn't lose her, not like this. Hours later, Sarah called back. "It's worse than we thought," she said. "Mark's the one who attacked you. Hired a guy to do it, wanted you out of the picture. He's been sabotaging the fund too, funneling money to an offshore account. These fakes are his last play to break you two." James gripped the phone, fury rising. "Where is he?" Sarah hesitated. "Last seen at the old warehouse on 5th. Be careful." He grabbed his keys, rain pounding harder outside. "I'm ending this," he said, hanging up. Meanwhile, Emily sat on a bus stop bench, soaked and shivering. She'd walked aimlessly, her anger fading into a dull ache. The papers could be fake, she knew that. Mark had lied before, twisted things to hurt her. But the doubt lingered, gnawing at her. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to James's number, then stopped. What would she say? Before she could decide, headlights cut through the storm. A car sped past, swerving wildly. She squinted, recognizing it. James's car. Her heart lurched. She stood, rain blurring her vision, and saw it happen in slow motion. The car skidded, tires screeching, then slammed into a pole. Metal crunched, glass shattered. "No," she whispered, running toward it. The driver's door hung open. James slumped against the wheel, blood trickling from his temple. She reached him, her nurse's instincts kicking in. "James, wake up," she said, shaking him. He groaned, eyes fluttering. "Emily?" His voice was weak, slurred. She checked his pulse, steady but faint, and pulled him from the wreck, laying him on the wet pavement. She tore her sleeve, pressing it to his head wound. "Stay with me," she said, her voice breaking. "You can't leave me. Not now." Headlights approached, another car stopping nearby. Sarah jumped out, phone in hand. "Ambulance is coming," she shouted, kneeling beside them. Emily held James's hand, rain mixing with her tears. "Why'd you do this?" she asked. He coughed, forcing a smile. "Had to find you. Couldn't let you go." She squeezed his hand, guilt crashing over her. "I'm here," she said. "I'm not going anywhere." Sirens wailed as the ambulance arrived. Paramedics lifted James onto a stretcher, Emily following close. At the hospital, she paced the waiting room, her clothes dripping, the necklace cold against her skin. Sarah sat nearby, her face grim. "He'll be okay," she said. "He's tough." Emily nodded, but fear gripped her. She'd walked away, left him to chase her in a storm. If he didn't make it, she'd never forgive herself. A doctor emerged hours later, pulling off his mask. "He's stable," he said. "Concussion, broken ribs, but he'll pull through." Relief flooded Emily, her knees weak. "Can I see him?" The doctor nodded. "He's asking for you." She followed him to a room where James lay, pale but awake, hooked to monitors. His eyes found hers, tired but clear. "You're here," he said, a faint smile tugging his lips. She sat beside him, taking his hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have trusted you." He shook his head, wincing at the movement. "I should have told you everything." Sarah stepped in, holding a tablet. "Mark's done," she said. "Police have him. He confessed to the attack, the sabotage. The fund's safe." James looked at Emily, his grip tightening. "It was never about the money," he said. "It was about her dream, and then it became ours." Emily's throat closed, tears spilling over. "I thought I'd lost you," she said. "Don't do that again." He chuckled. "Weak, but real." "Promise." She stayed there, holding his hand as machines beeped softly. The rain outside slowed, a faint patter against the window. She'd run from him, from this, but now she couldn't imagine leaving. Mark's betrayal had torn them apart, but James's sacrifice had brought her back. She brushed his hair from his forehead, her voice soft. "You're not getting rid of me that easy." He smiled, closing his eyes. "Good," he murmured. "I need my angel." The hospital room was quiet, save for the steady beep of machines and the soft hum of the heater. Emily sat by James's bedside, her hand still wrapped around his. His chest rose and fell evenly now, the worst of the danger past. She hadn't left since they brought him in, her soaked clothes replaced with a spare set of scrubs from the nurse's lounge. The necklace with hope etched into it rested against her collarbone, a small weight anchoring her. Rain tapped the window, slower now, like the storm was finally letting go. She watched him sleep, his face bruised but peaceful, and felt something shift inside her. She'd almost lost him, and the thought hollowed her out. James stirred, his eyes blinking open. He turned his head, finding her in the dim light. "You're still here," he said, his voice rough but warm. Emily nodded, a faint smile breaking through her exhaustion. "Told you I wasn't going anywhere." He reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers, weak but deliberate. "Good," he said. "I was afraid you'd run again." She looked down, guilt flickering in her chest. "I shouldn't have," she said. "I let Mark get in my head." "I'm sorry." He squeezed her hand, a small gesture that steadied her. "You had every reason to doubt. I didn't make it easy." She shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "You almost died chasing me. That's more than enough." He chuckled, the sound faint but real, then winced, clutching his side. "Worth it," he said. "You're worth it." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was reckless, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Just don't do it again," she said. "I can't lose you, too." His eyes softened, holding hers. "You won't," he promised. Sarah stepped into the room, her coat slung over her arm. "Heard you're awake," she said, a tired smile on her face. "About time." James grinned faintly. "Can't keep me down." Sarah set a folder on the table beside him. "Mark's finished. Police caught him at the warehouse. He spilled everything, the attack, the forged papers, the money he siphoned. He's looking at years behind bars." Emily exhaled, relief washing over her. "And the fund?" she asked. Sarah nodded. "Safe. Lawyers confirmed it this morning. You hit 33 tomorrow, James. It's yours." James looked at Emily, his expression softening. "Ours," he corrected. "The hospital's opening next month. Your clinic's next." Emily's heart swelled, a mix of gratitude and something deeper. She'd signed up for a deal, a means to an end, but now it was more. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. He met her gaze, unflinching. "Yeah, I did. For her, for you, for me." She didn't know what to say, so she just held his hand tighter, letting the silence speak. The next day, James turned 33. He was still in the hospital, but the mood shifted. Nurses brought a small cake, a single candle flickering atop it. Sarah stood by the door, smirking, as Emily lit the wick. "Make a wish," she said, her voice teasing but gentle. James looked at her, the flame dancing in his eyes. "Already got it," he said, blowing it out. The room laughed, a light moment amid the chaos of the past week. Emily cut the cake, handing him a slice. "You're impossible," she said, shaking her head. He grinned. "You like it." Later, alone again, James pushed himself up, wincing but determined. "I need to tell you something," he said. Emily sat back, her pulse quickening. "What?" He took a breath, his voice steady despite the pain. "This started as a deal, a way to keep my mom's dream alive, but it's not that anymore. I don't want it to end, not with you." Her heart stopped, then raced. She'd felt it too, the shift, the pull, but hearing it out loud made it real. "James?" she started, unsure where to go. He held up a hand. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. I'll wait, as long as it takes." She looked at him, this man she'd pulled from the rain, who'd turned her world upside down. The necklace glinted in the light, a reminder of the hope they'd built together. "I was scared," she said finally, her voice trembling. "After my mom, after Mark, I didn't think I could trust anyone again. But you called me an angel that night, and I've been falling for you ever since. I just didn't want to admit it." His eyes widened, a slow smile spreading across his face. So, you're saying I've got a chance? She laughed, tears spilling over. More than a chance. He reached for her, pulling her close despite the wires and bandages. She rested her forehead against his, breathing him in. We'll figure it out, he said. No deals, no lies, just us. She nodded, her voice a whisper. Just us. They stayed like that, the rain outside fading to a drizzle, the storm finally breaking. For the first time in years, Emily felt whole, not because of the clinic or the hospital, but because of him. Weeks later, James was discharged. He moved slower, leaning on a cane, but his strength returned with each day. Emily stayed at the mansion, no longer as a guest but as something more. They planned the hospital's opening together, finalizing details over coffee and late-night talks. Mark's trial came and went, a distant shadow they left behind. The fund was secured, the hospital funded, and Emily's clinic broke ground in a quiet corner of the city. She'd visit the site, watching workers lay the foundation, picturing the lives it would save. The day of the hospital opening arrived, a crisp morning with a clear sky. James stood on a makeshift stage, Emily beside him, her hand in his. A crowd gathered, donors and locals alike, their faces bright with anticipation. He took the microphone, his voice carrying over the buzz. "This is for my mother," he said. "She believed in second chances, in helping those who need it most. I'm here because someone gave me one." He glanced at Emily, his eyes warm. "And I'm finishing her dream with the best partner I could ask for." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the nerves. "This isn't just a building," she said. "It's hope for everyone who's ever been turned away. I lost my mom to a system that failed her. This is for her and for all of you." The crowd clapped, a wave of sound that lifted her. James handed her a pair of scissors, and together they cut the red ribbon, the fabric falling to the ground. Cheers erupted, cameras flashing. She looked at him, his smile mirroring hers, and felt it. They'd done this together. After the ceremony, they walked through the hospital, its halls gleaming and new. Patients were already arriving, greeted by staff with smiles. Emily stopped at the pediatric wing, watching a little girl clutch a teddy bear as a nurse checked her chart. "This is it," she said, her voice soft. "What we fought for." James stood beside her, his arm brushing hers. "Yeah," he said, "and more." She turned to him, the necklace catching the light. "More?" He nodded, taking her hand. "Us. This. Whatever comes next." They stepped outside, the city stretching before them. The rain was gone, replaced by a faint breeze and the promise of spring. Emily leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I used to think love was something to run from," she said, "but you showed me it's something to hold on to." He tilted her chin up, his eyes searching hers. "You saved me first, in that alley. I've been holding on to you ever since." She smiled, real and unguarded, and kissed him, soft and sure. The world faded, leaving just them, standing in the light of what they'd built. Months later, they stood at her clinic's opening, a smaller crowd but no less proud. The sign read Carter Free Clinic, a tribute to her mother. James wrapped an arm around her, his cane gone, his strength fully back. "Happy?" he asked. She nodded, her hand resting on the necklace. "More than I thought I could be." He kissed her forehead, a quiet vow. Together they walked inside, ready to keep saving lives, starting with each other.